But whatever the concern be, they thought they could fix it using storytelling? Are you kidding me? We are techies. Actually, I'm here to break this rule one more time because the title slide is just a little bit too cute. Lights, camera, action. It was March 6, 2018. I rushed towards this very venue, completely unaware that it would become the most transformative learning day of my life.
That's a hook. And for me to dissect this a little bit, I don't want to give too much exposition on this, is what essentially he's doing is he's creating an environment. He's creating a feeling. He's creating anticipation and excitement on wherever he's going. And you don't yet know what the heck he's going to talk to you about. But because of the way he's describing it, he's creating a sense of urgency and anxiety and curiosity. This is I think a really powerful way to tell stories. And if you often watch some of maybe your favorite movies, if you watch the very beginning of the movie, you may often find that there will be some sort of action or some sort of story or something that's happening that you don't fully understand. And that's on purpose. It's meant that you're not going to fully understand what's going on because they're trying to pull you in, but they don't want to give you the 2-hour monologue of explaining, well, here's the whole setup, and does this happen, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And then after we spend 30 minutes explaining all this stuff, then say, okay, now we can tell you the real story. Instead, you just start telling the story. And then people that are intelligent will start to piece together what exactly is going on. At least that's sort of the way that I think about these things.
Some weirdo at Microsoft Research had organized a workshop on communication skills. As if after authoring all those tons of peer-reviewed research articles, we still did not know how to explain the value of our research or to pitch new ideas to the leadership. Or maybe they were worried about our emails and LinkedIn posts, or our awkwardness in giving feedback to others and resolving disagreements.
I love this, by the way. I love that he's again, I have no idea what he's going to talk about here, but I love how he's setting this up as this, how dare you come, you're going to teach me how to communicate? Do you know who I am? Look at all this stuff. I love that because more likely than not, I know Sumit, and he's going to demonstrate how right they are and how he learned significantly more by shutting up and listening to them than if he would have just sort of ignored this guidance. On top of that, I also want to share, just to kind of toot my own horn a little bit. Yes, we know about this. I want to share how action, not exposition. Back to you, Sumit.
Or maybe inspiring collaboration across roles and teams. But whatever the concern be, they thought they could fix it using storytelling? Are you kidding me? We are techies. Why train us to write Harry Potter novels? Anyways, I showed up merely to socialize. Over 200...
The part that... I'm sorry, Sumit. The part that's so great is the circles that Sumit and I run in. He's kind of like saying this in a joking way. But if you know some of the folks that we hang out with, it's not a joke. It's actually like how some of them talk. It is sort of like, how dare you come at me? I mean, I don't do this, and Submit doesn't do this. We don't do this like ivory tower nonsense. But there's some people that we know that do it. Like, oh, I'm a world-class professor, or look, I'm a world-renowned researcher. How dare you come talk to me and tell me I have a thing or two to learn about like communication? I'm changing the world with my research. Like, who are you? First of all, that's wildly arrogant. And I think just it's unfortunate that people are like this, and they don't realize that just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean that you're good at other things. This is the typical Dunning-Kruger type of thing. I think that people that fall maybe the most victim to a Dunning-Kruger are folks that are experts in one domain, right? They're experts in one domain, and then they think somehow that means they're experts in everything. Because I generally find the Dunning-Kruger folks that do this the most are people that are actually hyper competent in one domain at least, and then they make the mistake of conflating that to then somehow they're an expert in all domains. It's very easy to do, right? In fact, now that you're aware of this, I encourage you to try to apply it. Think about someone that you know that's an expert in something, and then maybe do a sample of that, and then think about how many of those folks then decide that they're an expert in all things. It's pretty easy to do, but it doesn't work like this. You need to learn to be an expert in all the things if you want to be an expert of all the things. And I think that this is the type of thing that you're going to get into. You're going to get to the peak of the Mount Stupid if you take this really arrogant and highly insecure view that you're better than certain things.
Researchers, many of them flown from around the world, had come here for the TechFest week. Our chance to show our work to company executives and product teams. I entered the lecture room. Wow. Only 15 people. Everyone else had the smarts to better prioritize their time. And now I was stuck here for the entire day.
Submit, you're on fire. I think I mentioned in the past that by the time I get to week 2 or 3, 75% of my students will have dropped my class. And I'll ask them to then look around the room, and I'll say, now notice all the empty seats. Is this a sign that you're in the wrong room, or is this a sign that you're actually in the right room and that most of the other people are in the wrong room? And truthfully, I find, at least for visionaries, it tends to be you're in the right room when there's fewer people there, because the people that are following the buzz, following the hype, following the AI propaganda, they're all going to be at the LLM talk, listening to OpenAI spout off more nonsense about what GPT-5 is or isn't going to be, which is mostly going to be nonsense anyway, as we've seen from the data. And the people that really want to grow and learn are going to end up in the room that he's talking about, where there's 15 people, there's 10 people, there's like 10 people in my class, and they're actually going to learn something super powerful because they're not just blindly following what everybody else is doing because it's like what's in vogue. It's what's fashionable today. I friggin' love it. Again, masterclass, like Submit. Oh my gosh, you're on fire, man.
But boy, it didn't take me long to figure out that I was the lucky one. Even today, I feel bad for those who still do not know what they missed. How many of you here were at MSR in 2018? And any lucky soul who attended this storytelling workshop? The workshop was run by Mario Horaz. He wasted no time. He promptly prompted us. When Satya and others come by your TechFest booth, How will you describe your project in 2 minutes? I gave a pitch that sounded something like this.
Talk in our session is automating string processing in spreadsheets using input-output examples. And I'm excited to hear this talk. The talk is going to be given by this old.
By the way, this talk, this, as I understand it, this is the talk that inspired the entire flash fill movement, which Sumit led and led to its creation inside of Microsoft Excel. And it fundamentally transformed. It was like one of the first prominent examples of machine programming in the world for a production system. So this thing, that talk in 2011 at Popple is the talk, as I understand it, that was the inspiration for this thing, which is now being used, as I understand it, by millions, maybe tens of millions of people. Just to give you the context of how much of a baller Sumit is, right? So he's making fun of himself here, but this guy is, when he talks, I shut up.
Author, Sumit Kulwani.
Okay, thanks, Victor. So I'm going to talk about how to automatically synthesize programs that manipulate strings from input-output examples. So program synthesis has been an old field of study, but today it deserves renewed attention for two good reasons. It has almost become a natural goal since billions of people today have access to computational devices such as cell phones, computers, and in the future probably robots. But these people are not expert programmers. And this young dreamy guy goes on. Quite typical of our research presentations, isn't it?
Now, I know he's basically mocking himself here, but and I'll let him do that. But I also want to say that his audience was a bunch of PhDs. I understand exactly what he was saying, and I think that he's articulating it precisely. And I can extrapolate from that core idea of the input-output examples and synthesizing programs that it could lead to something like flash fill. However, people that don't have a background, that don't have a PhD, that haven't married themselves and their life to this, yeah, that might be hard. But keep in mind, Popple, okay, principles of programming languages, I think, something like that. This is one of the most theoretically rich research conferences for programming languages in the world. So, by the way, I think that he won like a Distinguished Paper Award or something, Test of Time Award for this paper. So, anyway, I still think the way he introduced it is fine. But would he introduce it slightly different for Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft? Sure.
Mario worked with me to refine this into a version that would make people curious, lean in, and actually care. This is what it became. 9 years ago, I was returning from a conference in an airplane, and there was a lady sitting next to me.
Okay, just real quickly, this story that he tells here, this is the story that he told at Maple in 2017. This is the introduction that I got. It was, I was flying back from a conference, and a woman sitting next to me opened up her laptop and showed me Excel because I had mentioned I worked at Microsoft. And she said, "Why can't I do stuff like this?" And Sumit was really interested in listening. By the way, he's an incredible listener. He really listens to people. And I think it's a great example of this guy's like world-renowned scientist. You know, he's a distinguished scientist at Microsoft, which, by the way, is a really big freaking deal. This is like the pinnacle of scientific achievement at like these tech companies. If you see distinguished engineer, distinguished scientist, distinguished whatever in front of somebody's name for big tech company, it generally means this person is a superstar. You should probably listen to what they have to say. So one of the things that I love about Sumit, and I think it goes to how being humble and being approachable and just being open to listening can really open up incredible avenues is that he's on this airplane, and I think he's exhausted from this conference, right? He's been going nonstop. And this woman starts just showing him Excel. Like, he doesn't work on Excel. What does he know about Excel? He's an MSR, Microsoft Research. But he's listening to this lady anyway. And then he realizes that she's got like a valid concern on things, and he's kind of confused. Why is this so hard? And so then he went home and he looked at this and he's like, I'm going to try to figure this out myself. And then he did.
Was very impressed to know that I'm a PhD in computer science and that I work for Microsoft Research. So I ought to help her with the task that she was struggling with. She opens up her laptop, fires up Excel, shows me a column of strings that she wants to map to a different format. She gives me a couple of examples to explain her intent, and then asks me for a program that can do the transformation. Now, at that time, I had to excuse myself out of the situation because I had no idea about the programming model underneath Excel. But after I got back home, I tried to search for a solution to that problem. And it is then when I observed that there were many, many people who were struggling with simple tasks like those. So here is how such an interaction went on at Help Forum. So an end user would ask an expert to give them a program that can translate the string on the left side of the arrow to the right side. Now the expert looks at this and sends them back a program which extracts 2 characters starting from the 5th character. The user takes this program and runs it on the data set and figures out that it does not do the right job on another input that they have. And they send a second input-output example to the expert. So what do you think is the end user trying to do here?
So I'll give all of you a moment what they're trying to do. But okay, so there's your moment. My speculation, I don't know that I've seen this example, but basically what they're trying to do is extract out the string that is essentially the second string that's between the first and second underscore. That's essentially what I think they're trying to do. So what you want here is sort of a regular expression system that will search for the first underscore and then take the entire string that exists between the first underscore, the second underscore, and extrapolate that out. That's why this didn't work, is that it starting at the 5th character, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then extracting out, oh, maybe this was the first example, and then extracting out 2 characters, W5. That works in this case. What you really want to do is do a search for the underscore, then extract out the entire string that it exists before the second underscore. And to make it even more robust, what you probably want is the delimiter that you're using, which is currently an underscore, to change. That it could be a colon, it could be a semicolon, it could be a dash. It doesn't really matter. Currently, it's an underscore, but understanding the intention here is there is a delimiter mechanism in this string that could change for various representations, but you're going to search for the first delimiter, then you're going to search the second delimiter, and any string that exists between the 2 delimiters is what you actually want. This is, I think, like the higher order intention of the program that these people are actually asking for. That's my speculation. So let's see what Sumit has to say.
So extract the substring between the first 2 occurrences of underscore. How many of you know how to program this in Excel?
I don't.
This is one of the simplest formulas that will do the job for you. The end user.
Yeah, look at that. Yikes. Yeah, that is a lot of syntax. I mean, I suspect this works, but there's a lot of syntax. Like, why is this so hard? By the way, this is part of the reason why we want machine programming, is that for the simple users, that they're not trying to create a complicated program here, but they want it to do something. I think this is one of the major advantages of machine programming, is to express your intention in natural language and have a system, an MP system, synthesize a very small program that does sort of what you want it to do, very much like what I've done with the Goju Tech Talk thumbnail generator. And notice too that in this case, this is also an example where you you essentially are doing something that this is not, you're not building a production quality program that's going to interface with the real world. You are simply creating a small program that is going to do a very simple task that's part of a larger series of tasks that's going to automate something away from having to be done manually to make people more productive. I freaking love this. This is, I think, one of the hearts of machine programming. And also, you may have heard that as Sumit was explaining this, he used the word intent. He said something like, I was trying to understand what do you think the user's intent is here? This is like, I know that Sumit is familiar with the 3 pillars of machine programming. It's not clear to me if it's part of like the way that he teaches this stuff at Microsoft. But minimally, I think a lot of us in MP, we're using similar vernacular. We're using similar vocabulary because these words are chosen because they capture things in as close to the precise way that we can, given what we know today. For example, intention is one of the things that I think we understand and know, and so we want to use that word, intent or intention, and then we do. Okay, I need to take just a quick short bio break, and then I'll be right back. So just give me a minute, and you guys feel free to refill your sodas and popcorn and all that stuff, and we'll reconvene in 60 seconds. Let's continue. Back to you, Sumit.
Takes this, runs this, and is happy and sends a thank you to the expert. Now, this inspired me to develop a technology that can automate the role of this expert on the help forum and can automatically generate such programs from a couple of examples. And this led to this feature called Flash Fill, which shipped in Excel 2013. And let me quickly show you a demo of this technology. Feels different, right? What do you notice? Customer empathy, audience interaction, and a protagonist with a real-world problem. This story-based narrative is so much more powerful because it reveals the why behind innovation through human connection. It's a story born from deep empathy, from grasping the user's unmet and unarticulated needs. And it is this connection that makes a story memorable. Cognitive psychologist Jerome Bruner found out that when a fact is wrapped up in a story, we are 22 times more likely to remember it. And it is the same human connection that influences human action. In 2009, journalist Rob Walker did an interesting experiment. He bought 200 objects off eBay, old dusty objects like this figurine, for an average price of $1 each. Then he called up 200 authors and said,
create a story for each of these dolls. This is my speculation. Create a story, a backstory, an origin story for each of these dolls. And then we're going to resell these on eBay, but we're going to sell them through the story, not just their picture. So there'll be an origin story. This doll came from this, and it has these characteristics, and its original owner was this, and it grew up in 1920s Switzerland. And then from that time, it went down this path and blah, 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 bloobity blue. I think you get the point. And then suddenly we can sell these things for 100 times more money than what we originally paid, because now they've created a sense of purpose. They have meaning beyond just their superficial characteristics. That's my speculation.
Hey, want to be part of significant object study? I want you to write a story to one of these objects. And then he put the objects back on sale. But this time, each object came with a story. So what do you think was the average resale price?
100x
80
more.
cents or $1.20 or something else?
Way more than that. I think the dolls that were sold for $1 could jump up to like $100.
Make it a few fold more or almost close, $40.
Yep.
We like to think we make decisions based.
By the way, this is not surprising to me at all, actually. I've seen this in real life constantly, and I think that this story-based narrative of things is one of the most powerful ways to connect with people. In fact, this is part of the reason why I think that we're starting to get stronger and stronger traction with Merly and Mentor. And also, it's my hope, it's my belief that part of the reason why people are tuning into GTT is to get stories. Just me sitting around telling stories and talking with all of you. And hopefully they have some educational value and all that. But really, it's just like Empty Code was saying, let's just meander. Let's just talk about stuff. And it doesn't need to be super rigid where it's we're going to go over this, and it feels like it's a classroom. But instead, we're going to go on a journey together. We're going to go on an adventure together, and we're going to discover things. And I have no idea where this is going to go. Neither do you. But we're going to go there together, and it's going to be a memorable thing because of the fact that it's not pre-canned and is exploratory, and it's rich. It has richness to it, which is the other part that I think is super important for at least the things that I work on and the things that he's talking about. The stories give these dolls richness. They have richness visually, but now they have richness in their backstory, in their origin story. And I think that becomes much easier for us to kind of relate to these dolls and this type of thing when we have those associated origin stories. It's kind of like with superheroes. If you just see the superhero, it's like, that's cool. You know, I don't know that I really care. But then you hear like the struggles that Superman went through to get to planet Earth, or you hear the story of Norrin Radd and how he sacrificed himself to save his planet. It's the superhero becomes far more humanized and far more interesting. I think far more relatable. Something that we want to be like a part of. And again, notice too that these stories oftentimes get us away from sound bites. Sound bites are not stories. Sound bites are just sort of like, in my mind, boring marketing stuff. All right.
Based on facts. And we focus on creating slide decks with all the right numbers, believing logic will win people over. But the truth is, decisions are driven by emotional instincts. And that's why the stories are far more powerful than statistics. Here's a typical stats-based narrative. This is from a feature we shipped in Visual Studio called IntelliCode Suggestions. Developers love it. These suggestions help them edit code faster and type less. This slide attempts to capture that impact through usage statistics and few tweets. Maybe good enough for a research paper or a performance review. But what is the emotional difference between 1.1 million users and 1.2 million users?
Greater than 1.2 million suggestions accepted per day and approximately 1 million engaged users. I don't know. I do think that these highlighted things back here are far more compelling. One, because it's an actual person, you know, Alistair here, or Jerry, or Joachim, or David. And then the subtleties of highlighting, like pretty wild, almost spooky. Yes, please. I almost felt a tear coming. Like, yeah, personalize this, make it. And I think that this does have to do with emotion, but more than that, I think that it has to do with validation of things from a personal lens. So yes, there is an emotional aspect, but in more than that, at least is my view, is that there is a endorsement of something from other humans, and those humans are real people. They're not just random bots, like thus the showing the picture and then the name, right? This is, I think, a really big critical piece to help this land with your audience.
0. It does not move us.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. So he, when he was asking this question about what's the difference between this and this, I was like, yeah, I don't know that there's a difference, or at least I wasn't seeing it, and so I just rewound it a little bit. I think what he's trying to make the point is nobody cares, which I think is actually very much like how I was. Is I wanted to care, but I couldn't tell what I mean. Yeah, this is 200,000 more, but whatever. It's sort of like how many followers that GTT has. Like I don't know, and I don't really care. What I do care about is untranslatable metaphor, and Vare, and Taylor, and Ivan, and Empty Code, and other folks that are actual people that are deeply engaged with the content. Like, those are the people I'm trying to reach. And if we get like a really large audience as a byproduct of that, that's great. But at the end of the day, what matters is just having a small number of extremely high quality people that are supportive of a thing. And I can explain in greater detail why I think that that's so critical, because it does have the benefit of, I think it creates as a byproduct these types of numbers. It creates scale. But if your focus, if you get distracted to where your focus becomes on this, you start to lose sight of this only happens because this stuff happens, because this happens. These people are the catalyst that lead to this. This doesn't happen without these types of, generally speaking, doesn't happen without these types of champions and ambassadors coming out saying, oh my gosh, have you seen this? It's really incredible. Thus, these individual anecdotal cases that are like qualitative analysis, these lead to massive quantitative gains in scale. At least that's my take on it.
Impact through usage statistics and few tweets. Maybe good enough for a research paper or a performance review. But what is the emotional difference between 1.1 million users and 1.2 million users? 0. It does not move us. Now watch. What happens when we shift from a statistic to a story? A story of a person who embodies this impact. Someone whose life was truly made better because of this feature.
See, 1 in 4 computer users will develop a chronic overuse injury. Having one hand just means I ran into it twice as fast. Suddenly, every click sent pins and needles shooting up my arm. From the minute I woke up to the moment I fell asleep.
And see, we're already won over, right? We look at this situation and we're immediately compelled. We feel a massive amount of empathy. No one needs to say what we see. We all see it. And we're compelled because we want this woman's life to be better, right? We see that she's disadvantaged and we feel her pain as much as we can, being on the outside. And we understand that this actually matters to her in a very real way. It's not just something that's like making her slightly more productive. This is something that can have serious health ramifications to her, right? This is a wildly powerful story. I mean, literally, I'm 3 seconds in and my eyes are already starting to get red, right? Like this is really brilliant storytelling.
if I could fall asleep, the pain would not stop. Every doctor I saw agreed that the root of the problem was the thing I loved the most, my computer. Career computer use requires a lot of repetitive gestures, I learned. More than any one part of the human body is designed to do long term. A paraplegic who uses voice control will develop vocal strain. We've all probably met someone in our field whose hands or lower back hurts at the end of the workday. Or we are them. Or we will be in 60 years. I needed a way to reduce those painful gestures. I'm going to talk about two tools that I honestly use literally every day that help me do just that. The first, you might already be a little familiar with, and that's IntelliCode for Visual Studio.
Now, that's an irresistible story. Every captivating story follows a simple, familiar arc. A protagonist, a challenge or conflict, and a satisfying resolution. This structure is universally understood, even by children. Being drawn to a good story is like falling in love. Both flood the brain with the same set of happy hormones and hijack our critical thinking. When your story builds anticipation through conflict or uncertainty.
The other thing to share, just to reinforce the points that he's making, is at the beginning of his story when he went and changed the intro. So the intro would be more storytelling than today I'm going to talk about this. I was mentioning that he's building anticipation, he's building excitement, he's building curiosity. And so we have a sense of like anxiety or excitement or just curiosity about this thing. And he hasn't even really told us anything. He's just building up to it. And I think that this is truthfully a fantastic way to share these types of stories. I think he's just hitting the nail on the head. Now, we've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes, and I'll have to cut these into 40-minute slices just so I get the multilingual stuff set up. So now's probably a good time for us to close this stream down. But I encourage all of you to check out the rest of this video. I'll probably watch the rest of it off stream and hear what Sumit has to say. I think that from my perspective, one of the things that I've seen a lot of technologists sort of fall short on, which I've discussed many times, is the lack of care on mastering communication. And I think it's super easy to do because it may feel like, as a technologist, I'm a technologist, right? I write code and I design systems and all this. Like, I don't need to be a master communicator, Goju, right? This is for somebody else. What I can tell you is that if you want to, at least from my perspective, if you really want to change the world and you really want to have impact and do things that are meaningful, you must improve your ability to communicate with others, because this is one of the key ways that you will get adoption of your ideas. And generally speaking, communication comes, at least from my perspective, in three forms: written form, spoken form, visual form. Written form is very much like what you see here, or a research paper, or over here. Spoken form is what I'm doing here, or what Sumit's doing. And then the visual form are more like the pictures that we look at that gives us insight into various ideas, right? And so I think there's a picture up here. Yeah, by the way, this is an example of the kind of stuff that they publish at Popple, right? This type of semantics logic or mathematics, just so you get a sense of the audience that Sumit was talking to in that 2011 Popple stuff. Yeah, like this stuff too. But so an example of a visual is this. This is an example of the third type of communication that I think is key, is the visuals. Someone that I think is a master level communicator is they will be an expert, or they will have worked to hone mastery in all three forms of communication, because different situations will demand different mediums be used to communicate things. So for example, in GTT, just in general, I will often communicate in all three ways. I will communicate through spoken language, which is what I do like the majority of the time. But then we'll also have written, which we'll look at like this, right? Or we'll look at these things, and this is also written. So you have to be able to read this. But then the third is we will have these visuals, right? We'll have those visuals. We have things like this visual. We are loading up the deck, so to speak, with a bunch of different visual diagrams to try to express ideas in ways that help capture the essence that may take many words, either written or spoken, but can be captured in a simpler way using just an image. So for example, this little doggy guy, this is meant to capture the essence of objectivity, right? So he's like this scholar or something, showing that he's objective, right? Fast, efficient. This one's probably not the best one. I think I asked them actually to come up with a better one than this, but I don't know that we've succeeded on this yet. This is also probably not the best one, although I do say, I will say I actually quite like this picture, even if I don't know that this captures the notion of scalability, but hopefully you can see what I'm talking about, and you can see when we get it right, and then areas where things can be improved. Like, I think that this is not bad for objectivity. I think this one's not bad necessarily for private, because it's creating this image of privacy. Efficiency, but this is sort of getting, I think, a little bit more at speed, but speed is often relational to efficiency. But then one where I think we miss is this. I don't know how this captures determinism. This is a hard one to capture with a picture, just to be honest. And then scalable, I don't know how reading a book is demonstrable of scalability, except under the premise that something that is in written form can scale because many people can read the book. The book can be printed and millions of people can read this. And so that might be a demonstration of scalability. If that were the case, what I would show instead, though, is like a library of books, because that would demonstrate more the concept of scalability. Or I would show lots of people or creatures reading this book. That would demonstrate scalability. So clearly, even at Merly, we have work to do to improve our communication. And I think that that's part of the charter with mastering communication. This is, in my view, this is a lifelong goal. There's no finishing this. There's no winning. There's no to the point to where, oh, I'm a master communicator, so I'm done. I know lots of people who I would sort of consider master communicators, folks like Sumit Gulwani or Morris Herlihy or various other heavyweights, Alex Aiken, so on and so forth, Armando Solar-Lozama. I think that Tim Matson, I think that they would all tell you that it's all growth mindset. We're just here to do more and more. So with that, folks, thank you so much for joining. This has been a super great stream on a bunch of random things, and I hope we all grew a little bit. I have to say, I know I did, and I think this makes me like Sumit, Professor Sumit, Dr. Sumit, Superhero Sumit, even more than before I started watching this.